Hey guys, what's up? It's Craig over at Skin Jobs with another tutorial. This time I'm doing a multi-layer skull of the Grim Reaper. From the flame tutorial, I got a lot of response from you guys. Thanks so very much for that. I appreciate it. But a lot of guys are asking, are the skull stencils included? Unfortunately, they're not. That was a flame tutorial, and I was using the skulls as a demo to show you guys how I would lay my skulls in my flames. Because I had someone ask me, how do I do that? So I said I might as well take advantage of the time slot for the flames stencils tutorial. Today I'm going to show you how I use this multi-layered stencil to get this Grim Reaper onto Lexan. Bring that up so you guys can see that. You can see the depth and the three-dimensionality because of a multi-layer stencil. It's way nicer than just using a flat stencil and coming up with an outline of a skull. This right here takes your work to a totally different level. And with this multi-layer stencil set that I have, I can show you how to do this in minutes and have your work look phenomenal instead of hours and still end up with something washed out or flat and not as three-dimensional as this actually is. So I'm gonna jump right in, and what I usually do is, if this piece of clear plastic is your Lexan body, if you can see on this image, I have markers, and I have the same markers on the stencils. This way you can line up your work as you're painting. It makes it easier. So I would put my skull stencil, or my picture of my skull, on the inside of my body, so that on the outside where the overspray paper is, I can match these markings like so. So this is, like I said, the outside of your body, or the overspray paper. This is the outside. So when I go to flip this over, this is where I'm going to be spraying, on this side of the body. I'm going to do a candy blue. In fact, I'm going to do one in orange. I haven't done one in orange. I have a blue and a green one here. I'm going to do this one in candy orange and see what we come up with. Because once you have the stencils set up the way you want them, it doesn't really matter what colors you spray them. And I'm going to show you guys that it's just that easy to do. It's really not that hard. First thing I'm going to do is I'm using black. I'm going to line this up with the markers that I have. So with the black, I'm going to outline the skull so I can basically block out all of the colors that I'm going to spray inside. So let's go ahead and spray the candy orange. I'm using Auto Air candy orange, and I'm spraying it pretty lightly. And this is a thin piece of plastic, even with my heat gun. You just want to be careful. I'm spraying this candy orange very lightly. Mostly because the first layer of candy that you're spraying when you're doing this multi-layer stencil is you're laying these first coats so you can do the white stencil first. Okay, so your first candies, you lay them lightly because the first color you're going to apply is white, and you want your white to pop, but you don't want to spray your white too heavy, because if you do, it takes away the white, as it doesn't look like a highlight or part of the light source. it starts to look like you just sprayed some white paint onto a piece of plastic, and you lose the depth of field in your work. So when you're spraying that first color, which is the white, you know, make sure your registration marks are lined up well. You want to spray this lightly because you really are just trying to show the light source. You're not spraying this to show white. You're spraying this to show a light source. Now, if you can see that, it's very light. Now, of course, the more candy you spray, the darker the candy gets. That's what's great about candies. They're transparent, translucent. So the more you spray, the richer and darker this candy orange will get. But because it's getting darker, over top of the white that you've already sprayed, it's also enhancing the white. Now the white is getting richer, it's getting warmer underneath this darker candy orange now. So now I've sprayed these couple of coats of candy orange. This is what I call a grayscale stencil. These are the gray tones or the warmer highlights that are in the image. You place this on top, you line up the markers, and at this point what you want to do is, again, you apply a little bit of white, and again give it a nice light dusting. Again, remember, you're not painting, you're just adding texture, you're adding a highlight. So now I've added this white, and now you can see there are multiple tones in the orange. There's the white, which is just a slight bit brighter than the highlight that I just added in the orange, right? So again, the third trick is now you want to block out your grayscale a little bit so that it has a chance to stand out away from the next color layer that we're going to apply. Now, at this point, basically what I've done is I've shielded the white from the grayscale. Now I'm going to apply more of the candy orange so I can shield the grayscale from the next level. But what that's also doing is also intensifying the white layer. So this works multiple ways. And you see the orange is getting darker and richer in color. And you don't need a lot. You just need to block it out a little. Okay, so the black. Again, you line up the markers. And take your black. And it doesn't have to be that dark. Just fill them in. In the mouth area, I tend to go a little darker, and around the eye area, I go a little darker. And that's what I get. Now, right now what I have is basically stencil work. And I want it to look more natural. So in order for me to make this look more natural, I have to bring out certain features that are in this image. In this image, you can see there's shadows. There are highlights. You can see the dark shadows under the bones and in the eye sockets and in the mouth area. There's darkness from one side, there's light from another. So I have to make this have those same features. This is where airbrushing comes into play. This is where you turn your stencil into a realistic image. So I'm going to say this is where my light source is on this side. And if that's where my light source is, then this is where my shadows would be. So with that in mind, I'm going to spray some white around this side of the image, just the outside of this image. Now, this skull has some teeth, so I'm going to spray a little white all around the mouth area, all around in its teeth, its brow, around the nose, on top of the cheek, on this jawbone. These are all areas where I know that this light source is hitting, especially on top of the skull. And on my shadowed side, I'm going to shadow in around the top back, around the back part of the eye socket, underneath the jawbone, over top of the teeth, this back part of the jaw, this whole back section, inside the back part of the mouth. I'm going to darken it. I'm trying to make this look as realistic as possible and less like a stencil and more like freehand work. Okay, you can see what I'm doing here. Okay, now once that's done, you still have open areas in the candy. I sprayed my white highlights a little bit more intensely to brighten these areas. Now I'm going to go over them again just to be sure that these areas are going to stand out a little bit more. This is where you need to be detailed. You need to take your time and do this type of work. Once you do that, then you want a very light dusting of white to fill in all of the candy orange that may still be open and doesn't have any actual pigment of another color into it. So I just sprayed a very light dusting of white. And the reason I'm doing that is because now I'm going to do the background color. And if you don't fill in the candy orange with a pigment, which is, you know, a white, or I could have even used orange, metallic orange, or yellow, something to warm it up. If you don't do that, when you go to spray the black, you're going to have this really dark, muddy looking orange skull. But because I sprayed a light dusting of the white, it's going to give that skull now a really dark orange texture, which is great. So here we go. We're going to back this in black. Dry this up. I'm backed off pretty far away from this because this is just a thin piece of plastic and too much heat will make it buckle. That's why it's taking a little longer. But it's dry. And there's your orange skull. Now you see in the back where I added the black for the shadows, it almost makes the skull look like it's fading into the background. Where in the front, it's a little brighter. You have your highlights and you have your shadows. You have this shadow under the jaw, under the bone, behind the eye socket, behind the nose. In the mouth, it's darker. You can see this dark shadow in the orange here versus where I sprayed the white around the teeth to make it pop more. Once you learn to always have a light source and a shadow, so you spray one to the other, then you can turn that flat stencil look into a three-dimensional looking object that has a light source hitting it, hitting the jaw, hitting the teeth in certain areas, hitting the forehead and hitting against the nose, hitting those teeth and inside the mouth. And the shadow, this thing fades into the background. It's coming out of the background. You have the shadows in the eyes and the teeth. That's very important. That makes the difference between a flat looking object that's two-dimensional versus using a multi-layer stencil to get a three-dimensional object on your body that you're painting. And when you could put this on your RC body and lay some flames around it or lay some other stuff around it, things coming out of the mouth, changing the color of the eye socket, adding multiple colors in candy. I could do candy yellow teeth and yellow in the eye socket area and make this thing jump out even more. So there's no limit to what you can do with these three-dimensional multi-layer stencils that will just change the whole way that people look at your bodies. I mean, when I'm staring at something like this as a Grim Reaper coming out at me, I mean, it's insane. It's fantastic. So this multi-layer stencil set is going to be available on my Facebook page and on my eBay store. So if you want one, guys, feel free. Start ordering them right away. They are available. They are in stock. And as soon as you place an order, they will get mailed out immediately. There's no waiting. There's no delay. Thanks again for watching. And stay tuned for more great stencils from Skin Jobs.